Hi, my name is Lori Conlan. I work at the National Institutes of Health as part of the Office of Intramural Training and Education. I run the Postdoc Office and the Career Services Center. Today I'm going to talk to you about interviewing, something that likely strikes fear into most of us. But I'm going to give you some techniques using what is known as the SAR technique in order to provide you stories so that you can answer common interview questions. Interviewing is really storytelling. It's telling stories about your work experiences and then how they fit into the different categories of the job responsibilities for the job that you're particularly interviewing for. They talk about how you approach work, how you have done your job, how you've solved problems. These stories are fantastic ways to demonstrate successes, skills, and experiences that relate directly to the job that you're applying for. The answers to these stories and answers to interview questions in general should be memorable and highlight your strengths and why you are the best person for the job. And telling a story is really critical for what is known as behavioral interview questions, and I'm sure you've heard about behavioral interview questions. Behavioral interview questions are questions that really look to see how you approach work and solve common work problems. These are typically done after the get-to-know-you questions, such as tell me about yourself, or where did you go to graduate school, or why have you picked this particular career path. So here are some examples of common interview questions. Describe a time when you've had difficulty with a supervisor or a coworker in the past. Give an example of a time when you had to be innovative or solve an unseen problem. Describe a system for how you keep track of multiple projects. These are very common interview questions, and in fact we have lists of a lot of these on our website. Now to answer these, again, tell a story. And the easiest way to think about telling your story is to think about it in SAR, situation, action, result. This is also known as the STAR technique and other people who talk from the career services field. But we're going to talk about SAR today. So SAR is first describing the situation, the context, the items that need to be fixed, and how you're going to approach it. The action, the A of SAR, is to describe the action that you took. What did you do to solve a problem, to fix something, to manage a conflict, to be innovative, to solve an unseen problem? And the R is to describe the outcome or the result. So your story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like we were taught in elementary school. So let me give you an example of how I would have answered a question from a postdoc's perspective when I applied for a job. So the question is, tell me about a time when you solved an unseen problem. So I'm going to give you my answer, and then afterwards we will dissect it for what the situation was, what the action was, and then what the result was, using the SAR technique. The interviewer asked me, tell me about a time that you solved an unseen problem. Here's how I would answer. As a postdoc, when I joined the lab, the chemicals were in disarray. Nothing was alphabetized, they were all spread over the lab, and the hazards were mixed together. For example, the acids and bases were in one cabinet underneath the fume hood. This wasn't something that I really enjoyed. I couldn't find anything, and I felt like we were double ordering often. So I decided to take it on myself to create a structure and an inventory of all the chemicals in the lab. I alphabetized them, separated hazards, and created an online inventory system that everybody had access to using FileMaker Pro. The result was everybody was able to find the chemicals that they needed, we had an accurate inventory of what was in the laboratory, and we actually reduced costs by 50% in our ordering of chemicals and reagents because everyone actually knew what was around. That's how you answer a typical behavioral interview question using the SAR technique. This gives a really good story about how you approach work, solved a challenge, and it also says how you will likely approach work in the future. I actually recommend that you start writing your stories for lots of different types of interview questions. And you can find these interview questions on our website, which is www.training.nih.gov. There's all kinds of information, video casts about interviewing for different types of position, whether that be from industry to academics. There's different types of questions for different fields of study. Go online and check them out and start writing your stories. So the next time you have an interview, you're ready to go. Thanks for joining me.